All right, let's bring in the man who covered this game at League of Financial Field today, get his insights. John McMullen joining us. And listen, John, we're sitting here saying they look to be back to the dominant Eagle team that was the best team in the NFC today. What was your view? Now, the opponent was not as superior, and we both knew that their roster was better than the Giants. But what did you make of their dominance today?
Exactly that. I mean, this was not a football game. I think the team that should be most sick about this game is Minnesota, because the Giants shouldn't be here. And the Eagles, to their credit, completely dominated the football game to the point we had 30 minutes of garbage time. I mean, it was over by halftime. The numbers were astonishing. Total yardage, first downs were 18-3. The Giants converted 1 third down, 28-0. Brian Daboll lost the game on the coin toss. I joke around, Jody McDonald is big on this, but if you're the weaker team, you take the football, you try to get on that first drive, you try to shorten the game, and they deferred like everybody defers in the modern NFL. Eagles go right down the field, boom. Essentially, the game was over at that point. I mean, people say not the modern NFL. In this game, it was over. And, that old trope of it's hard to beat a team 3 times. No, it's not. It's really easy when you're better than the team you both the first 2 times, and you know it, and the Eagles did. So you guys were talking about Dallas and San Francisco. They're going to face a good team next week. Doesn't matter which one it is, but it's going to be a much, much tougher challenge than the New York Giants posed tonight.
Hey, John, two plays into the game, Jalen Hurts backs up, lets it fly, beautiful 40-yard strike to Devontae Smith. Do you think there was a statement by Jalen to let everybody know, I'm back?
No, I don't think it was a statement. We kind of knew before the game, look, Jalen's not going to be 100% until the season's over, hopefully from the Eagles' perspective after the Super Bowl. And he gets to rest and rehab this thing properly. But we did know the offense was back on the table, 100%. This is the playoffs. You got to win to play next week. So you kind of saw it earlier in the day with Patrick Mahomes suffering the high ankle sprain. He's out there playing, probably shouldn't be playing. That's just the nature of the NFL. And Jalen, everything was on the table. You saw it in that first drive. Not only was he 5 for 5, not only was he throwing the football down the field, but he also ran it twice.
Right.
And, that immediately puts into the head of Wink Martindale, well, we got to worry about this. He might pull it and take it backside. So all of a sudden that creates rushing lanes. And, by the end of the game, you're talking 268 rushing yards. So, but with Jalen's injury, it was always about the contact. It wasn't about the throwing. So I think people were too focused on that. There's a little bit of discomfort, almost a weird feeling when he threw the football. But from the health perspective, the bigger issue was, could he take contact? And the Eagles are far enough off the injury to think he can, or at least to a degree where it can be effective.
John, we talk a lot about this offense and Jalen Hurts, and rightfully so, but, I want to talk to you a little bit about this defense and what they did. 227 total yards of offense they limited the New York Giants to. 1 interception. And the Eagles, over the last 6 games, I want to say, are averaging right around 5 sacks a game. Tonight they had 5 more. The onus always goes on the offense. It always goes on the quarterback. Talk about the importance of what the offense was able to do from a complementary standpoint to what the offense was actually doing.
Yeah, the defense played great. They were part of that 28-0 first half as well. They completely dominated. As I said, they only gave up 3 first down sets, 1 third down conversion. Hassan Reddick was all over Daniel Jones early. I think he set the tone on the pass rush. The corners, James Bradbury gets his revenge on the Giants, Darius Slay. Yet these receivers couldn't get open against those corners. They just couldn't. And, Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, Richie James did a little bit in the second half, but the game was over by that point. It was a dominating performance. It was something you typically don't see in the playoffs, and it's rare when I get one exactly right. I got this one exactly right. I thought they would dominate the game. Even it was more dominant than I expected. But I always say styles make fights, and the Giants can't match up with the Eagles, and they can't. They could play 7 more times, and the Eagles would win.
So let's look now at next week, John, because they're going to play a team much better than this Giants team. What do you see in either of these opponents that would be the better path for the Eagles to get through?
I think the slightly better path would be the 49ers because, they have a rookie quarterback. And this is a very, very difficult place to play from the standpoint of when these fans get going, it can be intimidating to play here. And I think, from that perspective, as scary as Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams are, they still have the rookie 7th-round quarterback. And I keep waiting for the slipper not to fit and midnight to strike, and I think it's going to. It might happen against Dallas. It's definitely going to happen against Philadelphia. So from that perspective, I would lean a little bit towards the 49ers, even though from 2 through 53, they're probably better than the Cowboys. Not probably, they are. But the Cowboys are a team that if they play, and you saw it in Tampa Bay, if they play at their top level, they can beat anybody. Now, they're inconsistent. They can also lose to teams they shouldn't. So there's no guarantee they're going to come in here and give the Eagles a tough battle. But if they bring their A game, they can beat anybody.
John, when we analyzed every aspect of this game that we possibly could before the game was played out, everybody had their analysis, everybody had their predictions. Now that the game has been said and done, as you look back on the game tonight, what impressed you the most about the way the Eagles played on either side of the football?
The running game. I mean, it was Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell went over 100 yards, most of that in the second half. Boston Scott got his usual touchdown. Doesn't matter who they ran. I think it tells you, and I still think it's about Jalen Hurts, because when you have that threat, it opens up everything for everybody else. And I've said it all year, and you guys have heard me say it. This is not a run-first offense. This is not a pass-first offense. This is a Jalen Hurts first offense. And when he puts that threat on the field and teams think he can pull the football, even if he doesn't, it has such a huge impact on the opposing defense. And then you can run for 268. Or if they sort of adjust to that and they put extra people in the box, he could throw for 350. He's proven this throughout the year. And that's why they're 15-1 with Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback.
John, it's going to be interesting, whatever the matchup is next week. I hear what you're saying. They're not a run first and they're not a pass first, but I do believe that they're a run-dominant team. I think that when they can run the football, that everything else in their offense opens up. And when they get away from that and they come out and they want to throw the ball often and early and it doesn't go well, it puts them in a very precarious position. I believe that this offensive line is built to run the ball, and then off of everything else that you do, you can get whatever you want. You saw it tonight. Once they got into, they came out the first series, they threw the ball, 5 times and only ran it, 3 times. They march right down the field, they get in the end zone. Then they come out, in their second drive and they decided they're just going to start pounding the football. But I think the tempo was set once they established that they were going to dominate the line of scrimmage. I think if you don't do that, then you put your offensive line in a defensive position all game long, and if it doesn't work out, you're trying to like rewind it and reset the entire game. So I think that even if they're reads, and it requires that Jalen lets that ball go, or whether they call some call run plays where he just turns and hands the ball off to Miles and lets him run it. I think they need to establish that. And I don't know. You tell me whether they've been lulling teams to sleep the last 3 weeks with passing the ball the way that they have, but they really came out and put their nose to the grindstone tonight and just dominated that game on the run.
Well, I think most of the struggles over the last 3 weeks of the regular season had to do with Jalen Hurts' health.
Agreed.
Number one. But as far as, one of the most impressive things about Shane Steichen as a play caller, and this goes back to the entire season when Jalen was healthy, he will pick on what you can't stop. And he's done that consistently. And he said it to us behind the scenes. Green Bay, for instance, wouldn't stop the run. He said, I couldn't believe they didn't change. I couldn't believe they didn't. And he keeps doing it, and he keeps doing it, and he keeps doing it. I think you saw today, the big throw to Devontae Smith down the field. You had the big stiff arm from Dallas Goedert, then the 16-yard touchdown. It was actually the passing game. But Shane quickly saw they weren't going to stop the run. They weren't going to bring extra people. They couldn't do it. He kept going to it. And that's been the strength of him as a play caller. That's going to continue. That's going to continue against San Francisco. It's going to continue against Dallas, whoever comes in here. The execution part of it, that's a big part of it as well. But when the Eagles are clicking on all cylinders, they will take advantage of what the defense can't stop. And they've shown it all year, and it's an incredible versatility, and it's one of the strengths of their team.
John, listen, thank you very much. Here's what we know. We know that there's going to be at least one more big playoff game at Lincoln Financial Field, and we know we're going to see you next week. So
always a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
There he is, John McMullen, covering the game for JAKIB Media. All right, so interesting. He kind of likes the Cowboys in that spot. They would, So I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to reevaluate this now, Seth. Whoever wins that game, you're right, will come here, and I think the Eagles be a slight favorite over either team, but 1 or 2 points at the max next week. Now, you guys have convinced me now, because if Dallas wins that game, that's a significant win for them, and they'll come here with a little momentum, and I think the Vegas line will reflect that.
But my point is, look, understand when these two teams get together, they have a history. They have a history. I think it's something like 9 or 10, games under these circumstances that they've played historically, and they've always been battles and wars. Back in the 90s when they were trading championships, when you understand what I'm saying, when Dion left and then Dion came back, and then you had Charles Haley added, from the 49ers over to the Dallas Cowboys. Those games were always physical wars, and because back then your body was calcified for war early in training camp and throughout an early part of the season, you were ready for that, that time of the year. Today's football is different, I mean, if these guys get into a full-out war like it used to be back in the day, somebody's limping out of there. And that's the best thing that can happen for the Eagles, is for whoever wins this game to come out battered, sore, and tattered, and realizing that, you know what, we got to fly all the way across the country and play against a team in their backyard that's relatively healthy, and we're a little beat up. Now, the other thing that I would caution you to watch is the emotion of the game, okay? When the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, Minnesota was coming off a highly emotional win against the New Orleans Saints. Okay, I talked about it back then. But when you play a game, your adrenaline level is so high, it's pumping at such a high rate that sometimes, it's 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning before you can close your eyes and actually rest. Because even though your body's exhausted, you close your eyes, bam, bam. They just keep opening because you got too much adrenaline in your body. So think about how Minnesota, not only the adrenaline that they experienced, but, you've got to believe they partied their behinds off after that emotional win. So they come into Philly the next week, and they got about a quarter's worth of emotion left, and all of a sudden, the tank is empty, and the Eagles just wore their behinds out, okay? So now, if you got an emotional game between the Cowboys and the 49ers next week, I would ask you to watch the emotion level, the adrenaline level. Can you get yourself back up again? That's one of the toughest things in the NFL. That's why when people talk about those trap games, to me it's more of, can you get back up week after week after week after week? And I get it. This is the playoffs. This is an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. But the body can only give what it can give.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought it was one of the major factors whether the Giants could beat the Eagles. I didn't think they could replicate that effort. All right, we're going to take our final break. By the way, Giants fans, you'll go out and get yourself some receivers. I mean, that's ridiculous what they throw out there.
They need to go get them a cheesesteak and get on the turnpike and go home. That's it.
No, you guys had a cute season. I'll give you that. All right, one more little twist on the 49ers. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll close up shop with that little topic on the Lehocky Eagles post.